technology, and the things that affect us as both Americans and citizens of the world. I'm your host, John Douglas. My co-host is Daniel Lowber. On this 4th of July edition, what we really want to look at is what it means to be American. What are the responsibilities of being American? How is that idea changing, if it is, and how is it evolving? And so I just want to jump right into it because it's fireworks day. Yay! I get off work and I get to drink lots of Schlitz and blow my fingers off.
Happy DUI Day, America. It is America's birthday. People are going to be setting off fireworks on themselves and their loved ones to celebrate yet another birthday for this great nation of ours. Hopefully a lot of them die when you themselves. I always love hearing the dumbass stories that come out of this day. The only gripe I have as a fan of language is that it cheapens the word tragedy, because anytime some dipshit kills themselves, it's referred to as a tragedy. And tragedies should be reserved for like natural disasters and acts of war. It should not be reserved for, old Jimmy Durkin of Tulane, Texas, getting hammered, climbing up on the roof of his double wide, then jumping off onto a pitchfork with an M80 stuck in his ass. That's hilarious.
The same way that the word assassination is a little too liberally applied to people who maybe don't deserve the term. Sometimes people are just killed.
Yeah, sometimes dumbasses die. Sometimes the gene pool gets tidied up a little bit. There was this great game called Blood 2 back in the day, and the main character talked all kinds of shit while he was running around slaughtering people. And one of my favorite drops from that game was, the gene pool has become contaminated, and I am the minister of chlorine. it just cracked me up, and I feel like that a lot, looking at not just the world, but particularly my fellow countrymen. There's plenty of people who do stupid shit around the world, but nobody seems to quite institutionalize it and celebrate it like America.
But here's this dichotomy. I've had the good fortune, and I'm extremely grateful to have been able to travel a lot. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that. I've been to Europe, UK, throughout Asia, and
Orient.
The one constant I find is there seems to be an ambivalence, if not a kind of distaste for American politics. There seems to be some animosity towards Americans, especially, I'm going to say, during the Bush years.
Yeah, I mean, if you traveled before 9/11, I mean, it was incredible. Like, people, by and large, loved America. Slobodan Milosevic was not too big a fan of ours, but he was a war criminal, so fuck him. But that's
exactly the thing is
the people that we had infringed upon were shitty, like Saddam and the Contras and the shitty people in Iran. So the people we oppressed didn't really have a good PR platform to bitch about it. Going to war with private farmers like Nicaragua on behalf of big fruit consortiums here. Yeah. So the people we'd stomped on didn't really have a good platform to complain about it. But then post 9/11, we started just kind of throwing our weight around globally. And so the sentiment that I saw traveling, and that I've seen from and heard from my friends who have traveled and my friends who live overseas and are foreign nationals, it changed a lot, because we had an unprecedented outpouring of goodwill and support for America after the attacks, and what we did was use all that goodwill to go just start blowing up brown people for maybe being close to the dudes who did it. At least they looked like them. So, and that's pretty apparent when politics is a pretty cynical game globally, but nobody tends to wield religion in their cynical politics like we do. And so the grandstanding doesn't go unnoticed by people overseas when it's, people are always thumping the Bible here and claiming American supremacy and
starting a crusade.
Yeah, and people hear that and tend to take that seriously. So when people say it for effect over here, a big part of the base doesn't take it as just being said for effect. Like, fuck yeah, America, like might makes right, like US of A, stars and stripes, best country on earth, woo! Without really analyzing any of those statements and whether they are true or not. So yeah, it's interesting to see how the landscape has changed in the last 14, 15 years. And, even when we took ameliorative steps, like when Obama was like, hey, sorry, we pissed on a good, portion of the world for the last 10 years. People were like, how dare he apologize? America doesn't apologize, which is so incredibly tone deaf, because why would somebody never apologize? There's nobody ever individual, entity, corporation, city, state, nation that has a totally clean record. Should we not apologize for slavery? Should we not apologize for wiping out the Native Americans? Should we not apologize to the Irish, to the Chinese, to, I don't know, poor people modern day? Like everybody, every class that has been exploited and subjugated during our relentless march to what used to be the top and is now rapidly sliding down the mountain of global relevance. It just blows me away that people in this country can be so blind. I don't know if it's deliberate or just ignorant, but just, yeah, we're the best. Woo, fuck everybody. Like, not even fuck everybody else. They just don't think about them.
But here's the paradox is traveling, going to other countries, especially countries where there's just rampant poverty, very, very little upward mobility. Countries like Indonesia, Thailand, for instance, those are countries I've been to. There's a sense that there's a certain animosity, especially now in that post 9/11 world that we live in, this post 9/11 world we live in, towards Americans, but there's still that desire for so many people to travel to the United States, to be Americans. And it's something not necessarily about the individual, but it's the opportunity that being an American is. And I think the sense I get is that people around the world realize that in the United States, we have more opportunities economically, we have more social mobility, we have more options than several other countries. We're by no means perfect. We're by no means the ideal nation, if there is such a thing. But I get the sense that people traveling are kind of like when someone goes on a game show, and inevitably, if they lose, people are like, "Oh man, if I were on that game show, I would have won the Chevy Malibu and the trip to Hawaii, and the 2 Kawasaki jet skis." So it's the sense that being in the United States, being an American, is having the opportunity to do something good, having the opportunity to live a life that can be beyond your wildest dreams, but yet abroad, at least, it seems to so many people that we aren't living up to our potential, or we're not doing what maybe they think that they could do with these opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if we're kind of coasting on the reputation of the past when it comes to the financial class mobility here. Up through the 80s, that was certainly true. Or the 70s, at least, you could bootstrap your way up almost anywhere. Right. Start off working, sweeping the floors at GM. You might end up running the company someday. That shit ain't happening anymore.
Yeah.
It's that mobility. Yeah, okay, it might be minimum wage here is definitely better than even middle class in some third world countries, but you're not going to progress much beyond that without connections. The American dream has always been, okay, you can show up here with nothing, $3 in your pocket, $0 in your pocket, rutabaga, whatever, and work your way up to a comfortable life, provide a better life for yourself, and then opportunities for the generation after you. Nowadays, that can still be done, but it's not anywhere close to being the majority.
It's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, so I mean, it is kind of interesting to me because anytime they release a study of like quality of life and income, equality and freedoms and all that, like we're not even anywhere close to the top of the list. It's always like the fucking Scandinavian quadrumvirate for some reason. Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Norway, those guys are always at the top, and yet we're the most immigrated to country, or I guess emigrated to country in the world. So I don't know necessarily why that is. Maybe just because our discrimination is so much less enforced now in public. Like it might be harder to get a mortgage if you're a person of color or of a different than a non-heteronormative sexual orientation. Job opportunities, etc., can be a little more tricky to obtain, but nobody's going to set the dogs on you for using the wrong drinking fountain,
right?
Presumably in most, if not all, of the country. So yeah, we were built on that idea. I mean, we were built by immigrants who came over here and stomped out the original, the only original natives. And it's a country basically Phoebe for immigrants by immigrants.
Right.
That's changed a lot over the years. The manufacturing base is gone. The intellectual base for the middle class is largely dispersed. There's no real solid intellectual middle class and financial middle class distributed across the country. There's always pockets of stuff, but You know, it reminds me of that Greg Giraldo bit about the letters from soldiers in war, and comparing the letters written by people in the Civil War versus people in Desert Storm. And you had people in the Civil War who were 14, 15 years old and left school at 4th grade and writing these beautiful, you know, paeans to their loved ones back home. And then nowadays we can barely read and write as a society. So
I'm always shocked by the studies that point out that American teenagers, high schoolers, are unable to point out the United States on a blank map. So if you had a blank map and it had the shapes of the nations, you know, I did it myself, or I was trying to find Iraq, and yeah, it was
Mesopotamia.
I was able to find it. You know, I was looking for the right rivers and the right shapes, and you know, I was able to find a couple different nations. But it definitely is difficult to find every nation or point out every nation by the shape of its geography and its borders. But they can't find the United States. Less than 50% of American high school teenagers or high schoolers are able to point that out. There's other alarming statistics, and you know, if I had to point out what it means to be an American, and that's something I want to get more into, but what is important for America to continue to be something that people strive to be, or people are proud to be, or people take pride in? Because I think there's a difference between taking pride in something and being proud of it. Maybe just semantic, but to me, it's, you know, I think pride is a kind of a convoluted concept sometimes, especially when you get into ideas of morality and religiosity. But the idea of what makes America is a strident middle class, a successful middle class, and education. And those are two things that have been on the decline in the last 20 years. The figures have shown that there's a extreme widening gap between the wealthiest 1% and the rest of the nation. Education has been pared back systematically for the last 20 years. No Child Left Behind was a unfunded mandate that, while on paper had good ideas, there was no federal grant money, or it was unfunded. So it's like saying, hey, go to the store and get me kale and some
quinoa,
bagel chips,
flaxseed granola,
and some protein shakes
at some point,
and yeah, pay for it with the fucking lint in your pocket. It doesn't work. So there's either just defunding of education or creating mandates to improve education with no funding involved in it. So those are the things that, if I had to be proud of our country, if I had to point out things that I would want to see thrive, and in the past have been indicators of success for individuals, it's education and, you know, a thriving middle class.
Yeah, education is the great panacea for the world's ills. Every statistic ever shows that the more educated somebody is, the less likely there is for radicalized behavior, the less likely to blah, 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 violence against women, violence. But like, education is the bomb. That's why they used to kill slaves for learning how to read.
Right.
You know, and I forget who said it, but somebody much smarter than I am said that the definition of privilege is not having to think about something. And that's how privileged we are. You're talking about people not being able to spot the United States on a map. We don't have to. Right. We are America. You can't grow up anywhere in the world and operate on a national or international level and not know about America. We are the big 800-pound gorilla in the room still. So people have to know about us. We don't have to know about fucking anybody. How does it affect my life living here in Las Vegas if I don't know where the United States is on a map? It doesn't. Right. I can work in a casino. I could work as an accountant. I could work as an entrepreneur, a filmmaker, whatever, and not ever leave this country, be wildly successful, and not be able to name one capital city outside of my own state. Like, we are privileged to be so successful that allows us to be insular. But as soon as you become insular, that starts the rot. As soon as people become complacent, you learn that from Rome. All that being said, there's nowhere else on earth I'd rather live. I was coming back from the Dominican Republic last year. I was filming over there, and we got stuck over there for an extra day, and the porters dropped our film equipment, and when we specifically told them not to, and there was, you know, like 18-inch long hairs in our salad at the roach until they put us up overnight, and just generally one of those cumulative bad travel experiences, not a travel nightmare, because again, that word gets overused. Like, oh, they lost my bags. It's like, well, if your plane went down, you kind of survived and then got stuck in the Arctic for 3. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Getting delayed 24 hours isn't a nightmare. But
I was on the runway for 40 fucking minutes. Can you believe that?
I almost missed my connecting flight.
Oh my God, I had to sit on the plane.
Yeah. Only 3 complimentary international drinks. That was garbage. But coming back, it was a stressful shoot. It was a stressful time getting home, and just landing in Atlanta. Everybody was super pleasant and super welcoming. Hey, welcome home, everybody. I was just like, oh, this is so nice. And just being here, like, we can come on our radio show and shit all over the country and say Jesus is bullshit and Allah is imaginary, and nothing's going to fucking happen to us. We'll go home, we'll have our hot dogs, we'll set off our fireworks and go about our lives. We did that in Saudi Arabia. We'd be sentenced to life in prison and flogged every Friday till we're fucking dead. The freedom we have here is not top of the pops. Again, that the Scandinavian countries tend to do better than we do, but it's pretty damn great. And for all that we do wrong as a country, there's so much that we do right. We're always the most philanthropic country by a mile.
Right.
Yeah, there's a disaster. People open up their hearts and open up their wallets. Now they should do it with a little more direction. I saw this article not too long ago that the Red Cross managed to build 6 homes in Haiti.
6.
9 figures were the donations after the big earthquake, and they built 6 fucking houses.
Well, that speaks to the rampant inefficiency of NGOs that's been documented. ABC had Dateline. Someone had an expose on a lot of these supposed philanthropic organizations that take in millions of dollars and sent out, year-old expired coconut M&Ms to people in Haiti or people into disaster areas. And
they have coconuts in Haiti, right? They love these coconut M&Ms,
right? And so that is a problem, but absolutely, I mean, and I think that speaks to a greater sense that there is so much you can do here, and what angers people, in my perception, is that not that we have the opportunity so much, it's that we often fall short of fulfilling that potential. Yeah. There's a sense that Americans are lazy, and that's a thing that's echoed in our media, right? If you look at reality television, which seems to hopefully be running its course, and television will be repopulated with scripted television shows, but there's a sense that there's overprivilege, there's a lack of hard work, especially in younger generations, and I think really most people work hard. I think most people work hard. Maybe that may not be efficient. We talked about how technology is supposed to save time. Oh, computers and cell phones and database programs, yet Americans work more hours than they've ever worked historically. Yeah. I think, and this might be something that you contend, but I think that because of our representation in pop culture, that representation gives Americans a bad name because of the very selective kind of spectacle, which is not social media, which is a reality television. When you have the Jersey Shore as the ambassadors to the Northeast, as opposed to professors from Harvard, someone who's a representative from Johns Hopkins cancer treatment ward. Like we're putting the dumbest people, the most flippant, kind of vapid people on television because it's spectacle. It's fun to point and laugh at them and say, "Oh, I'm better than them," or "I could be them." Right? There's that duality. There is, oh well, I can dismiss them because I'm so much better than this person, or oh, they're on TV and they're not much smarter than me, or I'm smarter than them. I can attain what they have.
Well, sideshow has always been a draw in American and human culture. I mean, the circus and the freak show. The freak show has always been the most visited part of the circus for centuries. So
the nudie tents.
Yeah, nobody's thinking that those reality shows represent the pinnacle of American culture. That might be what gets exported and seen. but nobody here is claiming that it's the best representation of what we are.
No,
so,
I mean like abroad. People,
yeah, and
people
I mean, and I don't really give a shit. I mean, you look at some of the absolute dog shit programming that ends up being the most highly rated stuff in Japan and Italy and all over the world. It's way fucking worse. I mean, when you have variety shows that are straight out of the Al Jolson Mammy playbook, that's the biggest primetime hit in Italy, and things like that in Japan. I mean, Bob Sapp was a huge figure in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they just had him do the most racist caricatures of all time. Big black dude, former NFL lineman, went to the University of Washington, just like me. And they would just have him like put it like on a big like a monkey suit and be dancing around and growing like a banana. And
this was in Italy?
This was in Japan.
Oh, Japan.
And so, really highly paid guy, made a lot of money, but doing it in a really degrading way. So, I mean, yeah, there's things that we don't do well, and we always need to work on them. But getting back to the point of people not working hard, people need to have a reason to work hard and an objective in mind. If you go to school and you work really hard and you do a good job and you get your degree and you come out, where are you going to fucking work? Employment for people in their fields of study coming out of college is like the lowest it's ever been. So why bust your ass and get a degree then? If you're just going to be flipping burgers or making lattes or digging ditches anyway, why not just do that? People work hard when you can attain something. Now that being said, a friend of mine, Davey May, had a great point about education in this country. So you gotta want it. You gotta want to be educated, and we have the opportunity to get educated here, but we don't instill it really in our kids that it's a privilege to go to school and get educated. It's it's just something you got to do. Where people bleed and die to come here and get educated, and so they go to learn. They don't speak the fucking language. They go, they learn the language, they bust their asses, they achieve it and make something of themselves. Yeah. Whereas here it's like, hey, school's just something you got to do. And what do you really want to do, Billy? Not just do something, work really hard, become skilled at something, and figure out what you want to do later. It's like, we're kind of privileged to the point of being insular with that too. My parents worked hard, their grandparents worked even harder, just to provide a good living and better opportunities for the next generation. So I get to worry about my self-actualization instead of, groceries or where am I ever going to have a new pair of shoes again?
Right. So, and yeah, I mean, a couple semesters ago when I was teaching at UNLV, I had a student from Kazakhstan who ironically didn't look like Sacha Baron Cohen dressed up as Borat. I had a student from Kazakhstan, and the first thing that he did was brought me a candy bar, talked to me about his country. There was that sense of ambassador's pride. Now, he was going to the School of Hospitality, so maybe that's something that he was had cultivated and developed, and isn't necessarily representative of every Kazakhstani student, or Kazakh student. But yeah, there's a sense that education is sacred for people who either didn't have the opportunity to access it or realize how valuable that access is. And what I think is the problem, and unfortunately, I can't blame anyone except the higher education system, is the fact that there's too many people going to college, especially for a liberal arts degree. And the idea that everyone has to go to college has been exacerbated both by popular culture and the higher education system itself. The NFL is going to keep growing on behalf of the NFL and expanding their own interests. Colleges want more kids to go to college. And because of the way student loans are, because of the way our disposable income as Americans are, is we still have enough money to access education at any level. The problem, I think, is that there is too many students going for that 4-year degree, for that liberal arts degree.
And a useless degree. Yeah, that's the big point. Like, you want to major in French literature, fine, but the world doesn't know you a fucking living.
Right.
So maybe you should be, serving lattes while you write your, the next crappy American novel.
Right.
I don't have any sympathy for people who want to major in something that's useless to society, produces nothing except, intellectual discussion. Like, that's not monetizable by and large. It's not saying it's not good, but why spend 150 grand getting a degree in French lit and maybe go get a teaching position for 30 grand a year?
Exactly.
Like, the numbers don't add up. So yeah, okay, Billy, you want to learn French lit, that's cool, but don't expect a job. You're going to be in debt for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
So, tough shit.
If you look at countries that have higher ratings for education, much higher rating than the United States, which I believe it hovers around the 80s nationally in the list of countries. Countries like Germany, which are in the top 10,
gold standard right there.
Right, have an aggressive and differentiated path for students. Now, I think the problem lies in that idea that everyone can go to college. No, everyone can't go to college, or everyone shouldn't go to college. And that's the problem, is everyone is going to college, but a lot of people shouldn't be there, especially when graduation rates in the United States for colleges is starting to hover around 50%. UNLV,
right there with marriage.
Right. UNLV, the college I taught at, had a sub 50% graduation rate.
University of No Learning Vocational. Yeah. Which kind of undersells it, because a vocational school is a useful, good thing. Talking of Germany, they have a trade school route. It's starting when you're 15. If you're like, books aren't for me, I'm really good with engines, I want to be a mechanic, I want to be an engineer. If you are, but you can divert into those routes right away.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's this paradigm around a 4-year liberal arts degree where everyone has to have a one-size-fits-all education, because if you are routed to a vocation, it means you're dumb, or it means you're this fucking useless person who couldn't make that path.
Yeah.
Now, there isn't anything necessarily wonderful about being book smart. I mean, it's probably evolutionarily more significant to be strong, or to have a knowledge of
it's book
survival.
Smart. It's book smart is useful if you have practical applications. If you can build a generator, if you can build an engine, if you can design an internet structure, that's useful. That's being able to create something. If you're only smart in that, well, I know what Sartre said at the salon in 1712, who gives a shit? And that's not productive for anyone.
Book smart isn't necessarily the right term, but literary and kind of academic in that sense. Now, it's important to be able to have a strong sense of reading and comprehension, so you can go into a specific vocation or a different path. But yeah, like Germany has a point at where students are tested, but they're also asked, what are you interested in doing?
Yeah.
And when I taught, especially,
and it gives them an opportunity to do things. It's one thing to say, hey, what do you want to do? Well, if all you've had to do is social studies and math and history, it doesn't give you really an opportunity to see what kind of jobs are out there in the world. My best friend Josh is a perfect example. He's been a serious gearhead since before we met him. I met him on the first day of high school. I think we were 15 or 16. And he was a certified Volkswagen master mechanic while we were in high school.
Yeah.
That dude knew from the time he was 13, 12 years old that he wanted to be a mechanic, and he was good at it. So he should have been allowed to focus on it.
Right.
Not that he's a very intelligent man. Not that he didn't have any interest in these other subjects, but he should not have been forced to take all this other crap that he had no interest in, that would not serve him in his career, when he could have just focused on his career, gotten better at that on the state's dime. Why are they paying for this dude to take French history?
Right.
Not to keep dumping on the French, but it served no purpose for him. And he's a smart guy. He reads in his spare time. He studies that stuff on his own, and that's fine. But there's no reason to pay for him to learn that stuff that he's not going to use in his career. When you could have just got him a couple extra certifications, and he's incredibly successful. He's opening up his own shop next year. So
and going and working in a vocation or like in an apprenticeship was much more successful for a very long period of time.
Guaranteed employment at the end of that, which was good. You learn your craft, then you can go practice it.
Right. And basically, a high school education is bullshit. It's just, can you learn to work well with others so you can enter the workplace? That's very by and large what it is. College is learning how to think. There's not any specific great thing you learn there, and preparing you for some sort of white-collar workplace.
Let's be honest, it doesn't prepare you for working with a group at all. You can be a total antisocial idiot, but if you test well, you will skate right on through high school and right on through college.
Yeah,
because testing is such a disproportionately large part of it. So if you can regurgitate the knowledge in the form that they want it, congratulations, here's your degrees. You might not be equipped to work with a toddler or a horse, but you have degrees that say you're qualified for stuff. No matter what your degree is, when you go out to get a job in that field, they have to teach you the job.
Yeah,
except for very specific fields like engineering or rocket science, where it's okay, it translates directly to your career. Even then, they still got to teach you the computer system. They got to teach you the software. They got to teach you, it's just a chance to get an interview, basically.
College is learning to learn so that you can actually learn what you're going to be doing in some sort of vocation. But to quote Dirk Diggler and Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights, you know, everyone has that one thing. And when I taught high school, what I found was the kids who were quote unquote behaviorally problematic or emotionally disturbed, or all these fucked up labels that you put on kids, because, you know, that's just a beautiful thing to do to a teenager who's already self-conscious about everything, is that they all had something they were really passionate about, that they were interested in, and they're pretty fucking good at. And if you give a kid an opportunity to go down a path and to specialize in it and to actually do something, that's the thing, is there's such a disconnect between learning and application of that knowledge. And what I always wanted to talk about, even in college, was, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you here? What is this going to do for you? And showing that there's a practical connection between what you're learning and why you're learning it. And that is at an all-time low. Kids have no idea why they're in high school. The most common answer is because I have to be here. And whenever you have to do something, you don't want to fucking do something if you have to do it, especially if you're a teenager who really has other interests than just sitting and going to a math.
You have a full-time job that you're not being paid for.
Right.
That's what high school is. Then if you're lucky enough to get a job that's going to be minimum wage. I mean, being young blows. I don't know why people romanticize it. You've got all these responsibilities that an adult has. You've got no money. A lot of times you have no transportation. You got no way to do anything that's fun. You're stuck in you know, school learning things that you don't care about, that aren't going to be applicable to your life. The kids always catch on to that really quickly. Math is what makes the world go round, but a lot of people are no good at math, and learning math does them no good.
I suck at math.
I've got a degree in math and I suck at math. I mean, it's just baffling to me why, okay, if a kid shows a great aptitude for art, let them focus on art. Let her focus on art. Whoever or whatever it is that they're good at, let them take a crack at it. If it's going to have a useful application, they can barely read or write. They can barely do numbers. Okay. Oh, but they're a great illustrator. Okay. Well, there's a market for illustration always. So let them focus on that. There's no reason to torture somebody and make them do things they're bad at in the name of just, well, you got to fucking do it because I had to do it and grandpappy had to do it. And
could you imagine a job where it's like, okay, on Monday we're going to do algebra. That's what you're going to do all day. Then Tuesday and Wednesday it's going to be geography. You're going to have to fucking point things out. No, there's no job like that. Everything is specific. Now, there are things that everyone should learn. Everyone should learn how to operate a computer. Everyone should learn how to do a Word file and you know, Excel spreadsheets. You know, there's
practical real world things you will need.
Things that you will use. You will definitely use. And
budgeting.
Budgeting.
Teach people how to operate their lives financially a little bit. Here's what you need to save. Here's what you need to. That's never taught to anybody in school unless you're brought up with that. Good luck, kids. Like that, it just blows me away that, yes, okay, it is important to have a sense of the world and different ways of thinking and try that, but to hammer it into people for 13 years and ignore practical real world considerations. I would argue that unless you can demonstrate why you want to do something in college and you have an aptitude for it, there should be a mandatory gap year.
Yeah.
You know, instead of, you know, subsidies for colleges, like subsidize a gap year for kids. Okay, you get to go figure out what you want to do for a year. If you can't figure it out, well, there's always, you know, heating and refrigeration repair, which is a great fucking living, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a specialized heating and refrigeration repair guy, you can make $100,000 a year. I don't know why people crap on working. They say you can always work construction like it's easy. First of all, you got to get in the union. That's not easy. No. These are lucrative positions for people because they're necessary, because you're demonstrating value and not everybody knows how to do it. If the power goes out in the studio right now, it's just going to stay out forever because I have no idea how to fix it. Yeah,
like, I mean, it's been 115 and humid the last couple days, maybe the last week or so in Vegas. And our office, our air conditioning went out. We had to make sure that got back up. I pressed the button and it didn't go down. It didn't make the noise when I pressed the button.
We just openly wept until somebody showed up to fix it.
I had no idea. And like literally unless we had access to a specialist, there's nothing I could have ever done short of going back to school and, you know, getting an HVAC certification. And that would have taken years. That is not practical.
Yeah, we could look up some, you know, electrician manuals and some air conditioning manuals and maybe figure it out in like a couple weeks, at which point everything that would have caught fire and, you know, our facility would be gone. So that wouldn't do us any good.
It's like Orange is the New Black. What's her name? Poppy?
I don't learn any of their names.
Oh, the main girl goes into the electric lab the electricity workshop, and the guy gives her a lamp and says, okay, you know, you can leave when the lamp works. And I don't necessarily think that's an effective style of learning, but yeah, I mean, she works in there until she can get the fucking lamp to work.
Yeah.
And
you have a skill now.
Right. Now you have a skill. Lamps. You can fix lamps.
I think there should be a hybrid. Kind of thinking about this now. If you want to major in French lit, fine, but you have to know how to do something that you can monetize.
Sure.
Because if there's no job teaching French lit at whatever school, you still need to have a service that's useful to society and useful to yourself, a fallback position for your degree, if you will. I think it should be more of a blend of a trade with your degree. And yeah, give people time to figure out what they want. A buddy of mine gave his commencement speech at his alma mater and preached in favor of not going to college right away. He was like, listen, college is always going to be there. You can always get a job. It might be a shitty job, but you can get a job. Stop having expectations of getting something fun or something that's going to pay well.
Yeah,
you can get a job. He's like, if it's unloading, beer kegs from a truck in Wisconsin in wintertime, they need somebody to do that. And that will at least help you figure out what you don't want to do.
Right.
Okay, I know I don't want to unload kegs off a truck in Wisconsin in wintertime. And so, yeah, just do something. College will always be there. And chances are you're not going to be making a lot of money coming out of college anyway. So why not make, that money now, figure out what you want to do, maybe able to save some money, not be super in debt when you go to college for what you want to do and see the application of that. This hammering of it, you got to do it right away. You got to do it right away. Well, people don't die at 35 anymore. You've got some time. You're going to live, statistically, you're going to have 75 to 85 years on this earth. So you're going to be spending a third of it working. Make sure it's something that you can tolerate without wanting to put a gun in your mouth. So you'll have some morale and some drive to do it. And then you have some fucking aptitude for it.
Yeah.
There's very few people on earth who suck at everything.
Yeah.
Those people exist. But we always need somebody to sweep floors. So go sweep the floors, Billy. Like, sorry. But for everybody else, take some time and figure it out. So if you have to work some shitty odd jobs, while you figure it out. I mean, that's the story of everybody who makes it in entertainment or who's an entrepreneur. Nobody's like, well, I had a great idea, and then I was a millionaire the next day. It's like, I had a great idea, or I wanted to write, or I wanted to sing, or I wanted to act, and then I worked shit jobs for a long time, and then I finally made it somewhere.
Yeah.
The reason that shouldn't be the norm.
I taught for 7-8 years before I decided to go back to graduate school. And not that I dislike teaching, I enjoy teaching, but I waited several years to go back and really thought about what I wanted to do and spent a lot of time writing and traveling. And those things helped me when I got to graduate school for creative writing. And there's a lot of kids who came right out of undergraduate and they maybe they had the proficiency to write things, but they didn't have any experiences to write about. And, we had a professor, Doug Unger, who's a local Las Vegas writer and well-known. He runs a writing group in Las Vegas, and he's been here for 25 years. He says, well, first of all, don't tell people you're a writer, because they'll either laugh at you, or in the case of this one woman who was in a custody trial for her kid, the judge said, well, you're a fiction writer. How do I know everything you just said isn't bullshit? So never tell people you're a writer. And second of all, his biggest advice, and this is a $100,000 3-year program. Luckily, scholarships help with most of it. But he said, get something to fall back on, because you can write the greatest novel, but if you don't have the right audience and the right marketing and the right publisher and the right editor and the right copy editor and the right, all of the stars and the sun and the moon have to align for something to happen. And, do something with your hands. Learn to do something, because it's not going to sustain you all the time. You're going to have to fall back on something.
Learn a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. The prototype of the starving artist is the classic archetypes. Like, learn a skill, man. Just because you're a writer, just because you're a singer, just because you're an actor, whatever. Everybody's serving you coffee, parking your car, and delivering your food in LA County is probably a writer or an actor or a singer or whatever. Fine. And do something or learn something that you can do that's better than that and makes you more money if you want. If it's fine for you and it gives you the flexibility to pursue your dream, fine. But then you don't get to complain about it.
I'm a certified poker dealer. I've been in Las Vegas for 5 years. I haven't touched a deck of cards as a dealer, So I know that no matter what happens, I've got my teaching certification and I can teach first, and that's a little bit more amenable than having to work as a lounge lizard poker dealer. But I know that no matter what, I could get a job. It might be the job, might not be the job I want, might not be the job that's gonna make the most money, but I can make a living doing several things just because it interests me to know how to do different things. I don't know how to do any one thing that well, but I know a lot of different things. I can do a lot of different things pretty well, and it always interests me to keep learning. I feel like being an autodidact, someone who is interested in learning and teaches themselves throughout their lives, that for me, that's the tits, that's the bee's knees. I want to keep learning. I want to keep growing. I want to keep expanding, because if I don't, it just doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah, I mean, now that we live a long time and college is way more accessible for everyone, it'll put you in a crushing debt load for the rest of your life, which is a whole nother topic. But figure out what you want first, man. Figure out a budget, figure out a skill, figure out what you want, and then go. And that's not something that people are taught. So that's kind of a systemic failing of a generation. Like, okay, it's nobody's fault that they don't know what they want to do at 18. I was still eating my boogers at 22.
Right.
18, you're supposed to figure out what you want to do. The message should be take some time, see the world a little bit, travel a little bit, even if you got to go around with a rucksack and ride the rails, or a bindle and ride the rails, 20 style. You can get a little bit of life experience under you and then have that to draw on when it's time to decide the course of your life. You're setting people up for failure when you're demanding that they pick a vocation. Unless you have a 40-foot or 40-inch vertical, or you've been playing the piano at a concert level since you were 3, it's going to take the rest of us some time to muddle through.
Yeah, I mean, I had students who in high school, and granted, no one knows shit in high school, especially what they're going to do. Like you said, even at 18, let alone 15, there's no idea what they have to do. But I have so many students who, in the past, their plan, their strategy was they were going to be a YouTube star. And I mean, that's possible now. The recent episode of Marin on IFC focuses on some of the more colorful internet personalities on YouTube that are now successful stars based on that career path. But that's, again, the very small exception, not the rule. Those are the lottery winners. And I mean, even if you do have a 40-inch vertical, or you can run a 4-second 40-yard meter dash, whatever, if you're this super athletic person who's honed their skills and practiced, there's still only less than a 5% chance that you're going to get some sort of professional career. Yet I had students who their plan was, I'm gonna be a YouTube sensation, or I'm gonna be an NBA athlete. And what I always did was I said, okay, that's a good thing to aspire to, but let's look at the numbers. Like, what's the actual ballpark of percentages that people make to that point? We looked at something like the NBA, and we broke it down to, I think, something like 1 out of 20 million Americans make it to the NBA, something like that. I don't know if that's exactly right, but like, the numbers are astronomically low. Even if you are talented, even if you have natural talent and go through the right path, your chances are very low.
Yeah, and another way to put it in perspective for them is, okay, what happens if you get hurt? You make it. Congratulations.
Right.
You signed a deal. You blow your ACL. You can't come back. The end. Now what?
Yeah.
You're 19 years old. You're 25 years old, whatever the case may be. Whether you have money or not, you still got to figure out something to do for the rest of your life. So now what? Okay, you made it. Great. You got the recording contract. You failed. You got cut by your label. Now what?
Right.
The dream dies, whatever context, then what do you do? Because those are dream occupations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes to what does it mean to be an American, I don't really have any kind of concept of it, because I'm from Washington State on the West Coast. I lived there for 24 years, and I moved to Las Vegas, and I've been here for the last 7 years. I've traveled a little bit, Europe, the Caribbean, Canada, Mexico, obviously the usual stuff, but I still only have a regional concept of this country. I haven't been very much to the East Coast. I haven't been to the Midwest hardly at all. I haven't traveled this country very much at all. So, I mean, the country is composed of distinct geographic regions. We've talked about that before. So I think there's not very many people who are qualified to say they have a concept of what it means to be, a United States of an American. The only thing that really moves me as an American, besides the usual appeals to patriotic fervor of the military or whatever, I become a jingoistic madman when it comes to sports. You know, if there's watching the U.S. women's national team, you know, they're playing England tomorrow. Go ladies, beat the shit out of those stupid limeys. No, they're playing Japan because England lost on an own goal in the 90th minute. Even better. Now we can get revenge on Japan for the 2011 World Cup. Anyway, I don't know why, but it just becomes like immediately they could be from Hackensack, New Jersey. They could be from Rhode Island. They could be from New Mexico, wherever. But as soon as it's the United States versus whoever on like a sports competition, I am all in. And I don't know why. I don't particularly care about the sports that I'm watching even. It could be curling, it could be water polo, and I'm like, fuck yes!
I mean, every 2 to 4 years, you know, because the Winter Olympics is just a bunch of people sliding down things. So, you know, the Summer Olympics and the 1 or 2 things that are interesting in the Winter Olympics. God, yeah, I love that. I remember the first thing that I wanted to do when I turned 16 and could drive was drive to Atlanta so I can go see the Olympics there. You know, it didn't materialize because it's fucking expensive to go to the Olympics. But yeah, there's that sense of pride in representation for your entire country. You know, the best of the best of your country.
And the sacrifice thing is a big part of it because how hard they've worked. Everybody can relate to that. One of my favorite things ever, I think it might have been for the Atlanta Olympics. One of these, I think it was like a miler or a distance runner of some stripe, and coming into like the home stretch, he tore his Achilles like off the bone, and he just went down. And it was like the 3rd time he'd been like drastically injured running, and this was his last Olympics, and he busted his ass through rehab and surgery after surgery after surgery. And security is a lot more lax back then. His dad ran down on the track and picked him up and put his arm around him and helped him, and they made it to the finish line. And even just talking about that chokes me up, because to work that hard for your entire life and have the dream die, but still be like, no, I worked this hard to get here. I'm going to finish this race. And it just like the triumph of the human spirit. Like, nobody remembers who won that race. Nobody gives a shit. When you think about that was the story of that race. And that kind of dignity in the face of pain and failure, I think, is something we all would like to aspire to in our life. You know, there's reams and reams of material written about sports as a metaphor for different aspects of life. So I don't know why that plus the military brings me, you know, to my patriotic core as an American. Most of my family, or a big chunk of my family, has been in the military going back 75 years. So that's part of it. It's a personal touchstone for me. I've got people who have been in the Marines. I know people who have been in the SEALs, and know people who have been in the Rangers and Special Forces and every branch of the military, except the Coast Guard. So, because that's not really military, let's be honest. That's 4 branches of the military plus like their, you know, special ed sidekick. That's the Coast Guard.
Well, so let's look at this. If there is no real easy way to say what it means to be an American,
for me,
for you,
yeah,
what would you say? You know, what are your responsibilities, civic or otherwise? What do you think the responsibilities you have as an American are?
I think it's to service my little patch of dirt as best I can. I mean, to be
keep
involved.
Your side of the street clean.
Yeah, be involved in your neighborhood, your community. Not, you don't have to go out there being on neighborhood watch, but just do your part to make your chunk of whatever you have as good or better as when it was delivered to you. My grandma always used to teach me that you return anything that you borrow in better condition than you received it in. That's a good way to get repeat business, and it's just the neighborly thing to do. So be good to your neighbors, be good to the people, be good to your city, be good to your state. And you know, if everybody takes that approach, and by association, the country gets taken care of, the world at large gets taken care of. You know, if you're just good, if you just handle your business day to day in a responsible fashion. You know, not everybody's not ever always able to feed the homeless or donate money to the Red Cross or whatever, but everybody can stop for somebody broken down on the side of the road. Everybody can pay whatever taxes they're able to. Everybody can do their part to maintain and take care of themselves and their fellow man, literally their fellows. It's a pretty simple concept, and people do a pretty good job of it already. You know, I mean, again, with the philanthropic heart that this country has for countries that we we can't find our own country on a map. I guarantee you, I mean, the percentage of people or American teenagers that can find Haiti on a map is probably low, but let's be honest, probably higher than the percentage of adults that could find it on a map.
Right.
And yet, $500 billion donated for, or $500 million donated for Haiti.
Right.
And it's just that kind of, these people are suffering. Let's help them out. So we could do a little bit better job of doing that here in America, providing support for the homeless. Housing is always the biggest one. Mental health services, providing diversion and treatment for drug offenders instead of incarceration. You and I were talking offline a little bit the other day, putting nursery services in women's prisons. So
right.
the recidivism rate for women who are allowed to keep their child is something like 17%, whereas
wow.
the recidivism rate of women whose child is taken away from them is over 50.
I thought, the general recidivism rate of a repeat offender, someone who's committed at least 2 crimes, is over 90%.
Yeah, that's generally they're looking at the male population. Women tend to reoffend less. I think it's like a 50-50 chance you wind up back in prison as a woman. It's way higher if you're a guy. But because we're slower learners, I think, than the ladies by and large. Keep touching that stove, see if it's still hot. But they got prison nurseries have been around for 100 years, but the movement to put them back in was kind of jump started because it was down to, I think, Bedford Correctional in Rochester, New York, for a while. It was been around for 100 years, and it was the only one left in the country for a while.
Right.
And there's this big exchange of American prison officials and Russian prison officials, and they were like, "Why are you taking the kids away from the women? Like, we have nurseries for." And it's like, okay, if you're doing something worse than like Siberian gulags, there needs to be some change.
Right. So, and the way that they punish people in Russian prisons is to throw you in a room with 20 people who are on the take and have those people treat you in a way that is not going to be pleasant. So,
or they just work you to death.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thing in Korean. They have labor camps, and in Russian prison they have work camps. You go there and you bust rocks with your head or a tiny pickaxe until you're dead. You're sentenced to time of hard labor. Is a lot different from just making license plates and getting 3 squares a day.
Or in Japan, the recidivism, which has one of the lowest recidivism rates of any country, you literally are making paper bags in an assembly line, and every movement you make is in time with other prisoners and choreographed by a prison guard. So it is so unpleasant to be a prisoner in Japan that they don't repeat. And the punishment, if you in any way disrespect or speak out of turn, do anything, is to sit in the middle of a room on your knees with your hands on the top of your knees, just arms akimbo like that for 8 hours. That's your punishment.
Yeah.
So there are things that could be done to discourage people really from trying to go back.
Oh, there's all kinds of things that can be done. Very few of them are ultimately effective. People get branded and lose hands for stealing and keep fucking stealing.
Right.
But to wrap it up, to bring it back to, okay, what is our responsibility as Americans? One thing I love about Bill Gates, he ruthlessly stole the money that made him rich, but he started that giving pledge amongst billionaires, where it's a pledge to give away at least half your wealth.
Right.
And there's that drive amongst a lot of the big time American rich. Millionaires not so much, but billionaires, giving your money away. You work your entire life legally and via other means to make this big pile, and then people just give it back. We've talked about it a few times, but to reiterate one of my favorite quotes ever by FDR, it's like, the true test of our progress is not in whether we provide more to the abundance of those who have much, but whether we provide enough to those who have too little. And I think that's the responsibility. It's, you work hard, you do what you can for yourself, your family, your community. And if you're privileged enough to make it farther than everybody else, then extend a helping hand to the person or the group below you, because that's the ultimate society, is where everybody makes it up the ladder. And if you're always extending a hand one rung down and everybody does that, then ultimately everybody makes it to the top.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, those are pretty universal principles. Kind of the golden rule is treat others the way you wanted to be treated. Kind of basic altruism. If you do well enough, anything beyond that, be sure to share and be kind and respectful to your fellow man. Yeah, absolutely.
We're gifted to have the opportunities and the freedoms that we enjoy in this country. So it's disrespectful to not try and maximize those opportunities that our forefathers and foremothers, which I've never really heard as a phrase before, but that they did sweat and bleed and die for. they immigrated for, they worked hard for, they passed along these opportunities. And so we need to capitalize on them and then give the next generation and the needy in our generation a shot at those same opportunities.
Right. Yeah. And I think on this 4th of July, I'm probably going to go out to Lake Las Vegas if the weather improves, which it looks like it's clearing up out there.
It'll start dumping as soon as you get out there. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be thinking about is not the fireworks, but really what we perceive for ourselves as Americans to be the ideal, what we can do, not what we have the propensity or the capacity to do, but what we're able to do and what we actually do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody go out there, be safe, enjoy the fireworks, but just as importantly, if not more so, appreciate what it took for you to be here enjoying those fireworks. Yeah. You know, it's not a given. It's not a right. It's a privilege. So take advantage of those privileges that you have. Be grateful for them, and be good to everybody.
Yeah.
The end.